I'm using this work as a tool to achieve the higher goal that I have in life, is to really surrender to the act of giving service, to offering services, to be of service to myself and everyone around me and beyond. And this tool seems to work for me because it doesn't imprison people into one trap of needing to go for someone else to help them and heal them and blah blah blah. It, through sessions, are for tools so that eventually and sooner better those people can then empower themselves. And so the higher goal is to be of service and help everyone release themselves from the dependency of needing someone else to heal them. And so there's not much healing really, but just shifting.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and I really loved what you were talking about the other day about patterns of energy, or pattern, and then you also call that particles of light. But you really mean the same thing, don't you? About
exactly.
particles
So
of
for
light.
me, particles of light means we're all made of atoms, and atoms are just really particles of light taking different form, different shapes. And so when I talk about patterns, just meaning not bad habits, but those patterns that our particles are taking. And so we have different patterns, and they're not good or bad, they're just different. And some are more useful than others. So usually in sessions we call in more useful patterns, and we let go of patterns that aren't useful anymore for us.
Yeah, so what kinds of patterns can be altered by what you do?
Every pattern that you can think of, a physical pattern, back injury, emotional pattern of like grief, sadness, anger, intellectual pattern, thoughts that are blurring our minds, enabling us not to like think clearly. Spiritual people who have crisis of not knowing what's going on often have clarity of it doesn't really matter, just to be and to be of service, really.
Yeah.
And pretty much all kind of patterns you can think of. It can be material, you know. You can ask like a different household, or different, but it's not about the material, but really about allowing possibilities come in.
And so like it would be, like would it be patterns that also cause people to have like health problems and crises in their life, like diseases come up?
Yeah, well, yeah, shifting patterns that like chronic disease, chronic illnesses, depression. It could also go to like schizophrenia. There's no limits. You can go to like broken leg. You can go as physical as that, even more. It's like the sky is the limit. The possibilities only end where you let them end.
Right.
And really what helps having a session, having someone else being an observer with you, is we often expand our points of reference so the limitless is possible.
Yeah. So, but what you were saying earlier about altering patterns and patterns of energy or particles of life in people, like would somebody expect to get like immediate results, or does it happen over time?
Often, some people need miracles, some people need process.
Yeah.
And so,
or both.
Or
maybe.
both, exactly.
Yeah.
You need to assimilate what's happening too. So usually right in the session it starts moving, and patterns start shifting. And we start realizing it in the moment in the session. After the session, you usually see emotional effect. Either some people will have different emotions coming over and through. Some others will have clarity of mind and already have a clear sense of who they are.
Yeah.
And physical often is pretty immediate too, depending on if it's chronic or not, and again, if the person needs process or miracle or both. And usually after a few days to a few weeks, it keeps on happening, because we kept the possibility to have new patterns come in whenever they're more useful.
Yeah.
So then it's kind of a programming of, oh, a new pattern just came in today, even if it's 2 weeks after the session. And so that keeps on coming. And so usually after a few months, I remember talking to a client after a few months, and he, looking back, was, wow, it's true. There has been drastic changes in my life that I didn't really associate to it, but yeah, I'm not, I look at myself 2 months before and completely different. And again, those patterns can never be worse. in the first ones, because we're always asking for something more useful.
Yeah, right.
And so, yeah. And sometimes, who knows, if someone has a bad back, and they're, one of the intention put in the session is to get that back well, maybe the pattern that needs to be changed is not about the back, but the person allowing to take time for themselves. So maybe the back pain will stay there for a few weeks, because it's necessary to accept something else.
Right.
So it's never, we're never trying to fix anything, we're just allowing things to shift as they need to be.
Huh.
So, and when you put an intention before a session, we don't grab on it, we allow it to be there and open a door. But that intention or whatever else is changed as a pattern is kind of a domino effect too. Then that pattern shifted will affect everything else that is in your life. So how you are at work, how you interact with people around you, how you look and be, how you interact with life, and everything else, the news, the movie, that everything else is all affected. Is kind of nothing cannot be touched by this session. And so while maybe the intention is not to fix a relationship with your mother, that might be a nice side effect that eventually comes in.